Mr. Rentz from Aqua and the Ag Urban Coalition. Mr. Rentz.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and council members, staff. Mark Rentz, Aqua, and also Ag Urban Coalition. I was going to make some initial comments. For one of the things I was going to initially say was, and I've had conversations with Joe about this too, is we'll be bringing the Ag Urban Coalition together in early September, and part of our discussion is how do we transition from the drafting of the plan, which we know still has to go through all of its process, to an implementation aspect of the plan. And of course, part of our discussions were going to be this near-term action, since it's on there. And then as I looked at the paper that's out today by your staff, which I thought was very good, I had one concern immediately that came to my mind, and that was the discussion about how the stakeholder groups would be involved, where I recognize on page 3, Roman numeral 3, item number 1, it talks about the staff will consult with agency stakeholders to evaluate potential high priority actions in September. What I saw was missing in this discussion was how do you have a continuous ongoing dialogue, and that was what I was prepared to talk about, and I encourage you to suggest to your staff that they give consideration to that. And then the group came up here to give you a presentation, which I think answers my question. If the council, as you pointed out, Hank, is willing to take advantage of it, you have an opportunity here, and I'm intrigued where it could fall into place. If you look at item number 3 on the very first page of your report, where it says serve as a test of new governance approaches. I don't know if this is necessarily a new governance approach, but it may be a new governance approach for the undertaking we're involved in, and that's advancing the co-equal goals. And I think stakeholder coalition groups like the one that's before you now, like the Ag Urban Coalition, I think there's a plethora of information, knowledge, and commitment that this council could drain. So I'd encourage you to take the work that this group's brought forward and look at it as a pilot, perhaps, for a test of new governance approaches. And in that context, I'd like to respond to the question that was raised by several people about prioritization. I think prioritization will play out of time. You heard Jonas say there's some projects that are shovel-ready. That's the nice vernacular that we've gained over the past few years. But projects, depending on their complexity, take longer time to go through the various analysis and regulatory hoops. So that will kind of filter out. Another thing is, you talked about the funding mechanism. One of the advantages I see, and we talked about this when we talked about the interim plan that you guys developed, 2 years ago, Joe, was funding's always going to be a challenge. And how do you look at strategic ways to leverage limiting funding from a variety of sources? I think that's another learning lesson that may come out of this group. We cannot rely on the state. We cannot rely on the federal government providing the funding mechanism. So are there new opportunities that could be created from these relationships? So I think there's a lot of positive things that have been demonstrated by this. One other criteria I would throw out as you're thinking about prioritization is a comment I made when we were talking about the interim plan 2 years ago. And maybe some of the actions, I don't know the projects specifically in here in any detail, but one of the things I think that could be very beneficial to you all in these near terms, and we mentioned about it in the interim plan, is early on demonstration of success. Success spawns more success, which spawns more involvement and participation. And I think, quite honestly, that's the message you're hearing from this group here today. So I'd encourage that. The coalition looks forward to providing you some ideas from process-wise as well as maybe even specific projects. It'll be interesting to look at this list here, seeing as some of the coalition, Ag Urban Coalition members are actually those who have participated on this group, and I bet we're going to find some cross-interests along the line. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Rentz.